Hi, Troy Love.
Hello there. How are you, Tammy?
I'm doing well. And somebody just shared that they just did my emotional restitution letter with my wife this morning. Oh, I'm glad to hear it went well. It is no question, but it went well. Oh, I love hearing when there's progress and people are, like are using the tools that are laid out and able to engage in a different way. I mean, to be able to tolerate um, those process. I mean, in active addiction, we're looking to escape all of that. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad, I can imagine the relief of having that behind you, but hopefully you're both seeing a pathway to healing and moving forward in a very different way. So I honor your work. So both of you, because it's both of you. So
Absolutely. Good job. Proud of you. Good job. Well, good morning, everybody, or afternoon, I guess, depending on what time zone or where you are in the world. Tammy and I love hanging out and having a chat about attachment wounds and how that plays into addiction recovery and betrayal trauma recovery and all of those things. So if you have any questions for us, please put them in the question and answer link that's down at the bottom. And that's the easiest way for us both to keep track. We can see what you're putting in the chat, but it's easier for us to know how to answer the questions based on that. So if you have any questions, let's go with that. The other day I was talking with some men who've really been embracing the Finding Peace workbook, and they've been working through some things. And one of the guys did his fourth and fifth step, and he was outlining all of his, defects and flaws and stuff that he's working on. And he did this really interesting thing that he gave me permission to steal, so I'm totally stealing it from him. He then took the shadows of shame, and so he's a analyst. He's a business analyst, so he does all the spreadsheet numbers kind of stuff. So he's doing this all in a spreadsheet. He's ranking out all his, stuff that he's struggling with, and then he puts the shadows of shame along the top, and then he put a check mark by every one of his challenges that he works with, and then which shadows play a role in that particular behavior. And then he did a tally at the end to see which shadow scored the most or which shadow was the most influential. And the outcome was very surprising because even though the judge is the loudest of the shadows, it is actually probably not the most influential. And what he discovered was it was his royal was the most influential in the ways that he treated other people, the ways that he would justify his acting out, the ways that he um, failed to see people as human. And that was a fascinating way of doing a fourth step. And I said, I'm stealing that, buddy. I'm stealing it. And he gave me permission. But it was fascinating to see just how covert the other shadows can be, especially when the judge is usually in the front, just beating us up, telling us we're not enough. But there's stuff happening behind the scenes that we may not be paying attention to.
well, and I find that first of all, it went to his style of thinking and stuff, but I'm also thinking that is information that it would be challenging to get to if you're trying to do it a different way. So
Hmm.
there is, yeah, I think that that's a great add-on. So somebody asked, between the judge and politician, they are dragging me to the dark places. I know what I should do, but these guys are hijacking my frontal cortex big time. Any quick advice to reduce their influence? So let's back up for those joining. Tell a little bit about what the judge and politician are, and how they would hijack a frontal cortex.
Absolutely. So those are two of the shadows of shame that we were just talking about. There's six of them. The shadows of shame are basically personified versions of defense mechanisms that we have developed, especially as children, that are all shame based. and their job is shaming in a way, and what they're trying to do is shut down any pain, any discomfort that you might have, except that they do a lousy job of it, because the more that they get involved in our lives, the more pain and discomfort we actually experience. So it doesn't work out that well. The judge is the shadow that demands perfection, and it's usually the one that I introduce people to first, because they can pick up on that one fairly easily. It's like that voice that's talking in the back of your head that's saying things like you're not enough, you're not trying hard enough, you're not measuring up. Oh, you relapsed again. You are just an awful human being. So it has a standard of perfection that's way up here, but is pointing at down that you are down here. And the weird thing about it is even if you worked really hard and got yourself up here to here, the judge would move it, would do something else to move it, because the underlying belief that the judge operates on is you're never enough, and you have to be perfect in order to be accepted and to be loved. So even if you are doing really well, the judge will find something else out to pick on you for. Its fear is that you're not good, people aren't going to love you. And so that's what the judge is doing. For most of us, it's super loud and destructive, and it can really hijack our lives. The politician, his or her job, you can, I always encourage the people I work with to like draw pictures of what these look like, so we get an idea of what we're dealing with. But the politician, just like a real politician, is always wanting to get your vote. Wants people to like you, wants people to really admire you, to do all those things. So the politician basically is telling you to put on a mask. Don't let anybody see all the flaws and defects that the judge has just pointed out to you. Even though you have them, don't let anyone see them. Put on a mask, pretend that everything's okay, put on your smile, and don't let anybody know. Because if anybody knows, then they absolutely are not going to like you. And so the politician creates the false facade that a lot of us put on in fear of, if you really saw me, you wouldn't like me. So as I'm hearing this person's question, the judge is probably being super judgmental, vindictive, pointing out just how flawed and defective this person is. And then the politician is like, yeah, and you can't let anybody know. It's got to be a secret. You can't share this with anybody, which creates this double bind, because the only way that we can really heal is stepping into the light and sharing our stuff with other people and having them say, well, I can relate to that. Oh, I've done that. I think you're a decent person. Like, wow, and have some compassion. So that's how we step away from shame, is shining light on it. But this person wants to identify if there's any ways that you can do it. So in the book, I would just tell people to kick them out, but I've actually learned a much more effective way since the book was written. And the first is to imagine that they're in the room with you. So point to where the judge is, point to where the politician is. And then you ask each of them individually this question: what are you doing here? What are you trying to accomplish? What is your purpose in telling me that I'm not perfect? What is your purpose in telling me to hide and pretend? And if you just sit with that for a second, they will give you an answer. I know that sounds weird, but they really will give you an answer. To give you a little bit of a hint of what that answer might be, the judge is going to say something like, well, I'm trying to protect you from being rejected. So we go back to those attachment wounds. What are your attachment wounds? I'm trying to protect you from being rejected again. I'm trying to protect you from being abandoned again. I'm trying to protect you from being betrayed again. I'm trying to protect you from being abused again. Because if you're perfect, then none of that will ever happen to you again, is what the judge will say. And then we sit with that and we're like, that actually doesn't make any sense. Because I know some really wonderful, decent people who've had some really crappy things happen to them. So the fact that you're trying to perfect me to avoid pain doesn't actually compute. But thank you for trying to protect me. So we use gratitude. Thank you so much for trying to protect me from that. I see that you're trying to protect me from those wounds. I'm actually going to do something that tends to these wounds in a healthy way. I'm going to journal. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to listen to music. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to go to a meeting. I'm going to spend time with one of my kids. I'm going to do something that actually takes care of those wounds in a healthy way. I'm going to take care of that. When you say that to the judge will say, okay, I'll come back later, I guess. It's really weird. Like, all of a sudden, the judge shuts up and doesn't know what to do. And it's the same way with the politician. What are you doing here? I'm trying to protect you from being rejected, abandoned, betrayed, all that. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for trying to do that. And this is what I'm going to do instead for self care, loving kindness, that kind of thing. They only come out because you're in pain. So if we can address the pain in a healthy way, they don't have a job to do and they will go away for a little while. So those are two, that's a pretty simple way of doing it. It doesn't take very long, maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes at most to do that. And then you have to follow through with what you said to those that you're going to do. Pick up the phone, go to a meeting, journal, listen, do something that's self care related for you.
I'm muted, sorry. Yeah, but I think I loved when you're going like, the judge is gonna go, "Oh, okay, I'll come back later." And you know that the judge will. I mean, the judge
Mhm.
is gonna come back later, but in the moment, there you go. You've got, this space where your frontal cortex is not hijacked. Um, so the next question, well, actually, I'm gonna go. There was somebody in the chat that put, "Is this something you could ask your enmeshed spouse whose politician is telling his wife which mask to put on?"
Uh, so I've never found it helpful to say to as a therapist, I can get away with which shadow is that that's talking to you. uh, as a partner, I've never found that to be particularly helpful. Usually because there's already a lot of pain going on. Um, so I don't know if that would be as helpful to say that unless you have a pretty decent relationship with that person and they understand the words and say, "Hey, I'm getting a sense that one of your shadows is out because I can feel like we're gonna go right into that spiral thing that we've done before. I can tell this is what shadow's coming out for me. What shadow's coming out for you?" And maybe doing it from an ownership place and then saying, "So what do we want to do? Do we want to do some practice self-compassion, something like that? Because um, I can feel that this is going to get us into some pretty hot water really quick, and I don't want that."
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's like that's down the process when you've got the words, you've got the language, you've got the ability to withstand that. In this, I'm reading somebody who's enmeshed, so hasn't done the separation, and is still wanting to have the mask put on. But I think it's fair to say, like I'm taking care of me, and I need to show up my true authentic self. And if I can see that makes you uncomfortable, I'd be happy to talk to you about that more. But yeah, I'm gonna do the real me. So
Yeah, if your spouse is saying that to you, I mean, there's that's also not very helpful. Like it's like,
yeah,
oh, your spouse say, "Well, which mask are you wearing today?" It's like,
yeah.
oh, so that's an invitation to lean in a little bit and say, "Okay, something's coming up. Can we talk about what's happening?" Because I can tell there's pain going on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all it like a mask, the being compartmentalized, all of those things are, I am afraid, I don't want to feel pain, I need to project a different image. So there's always the stuff behind it, but being able to show up in my true authentic self, and even with my little ragged edges, I'm okay with that. So the next question, I'm a recovering porn sex addict, yay, who had an affair in 2020. I staggered my disclosure to my wife about everything. Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, I just feel the immense pain for your spouse. But now I have told her everything, including lying and being sober from porn for 12 years. I hope and pray that you have done this with a qualified therapist and you didn't just do the surgery. I say it's like doing the DIY version is really painful. So I've been honest with myself and I'm no longer in denial. How does a full disclosure work when all the details and secrets have been revealed?
Well, that's good. I'm first of all, make sure you're working with somebody who and knows how to do a full disclosure the right way. In some ways, because everything is already out, um, there won't be any surprises for the partner. There is still a formal way that we try to do things to try and keep both the spouse and the partner safe during a full disclosure. And there's some things, and they're at and oftentimes a guy, because I usually work with guys who are doing this, will say there's nothing else that they don't know. And then when they start actually doing the work of the full disclosure, and it can take several months to do one correctly, they realize, oh, there were a couple of other things that I hadn't disclosed to my spouse. And so that's working on that. And then we're also working with the partner to be prepared to hear it in a way that creates safety. If indeed you have told your spouse everything already, then the full disclosure will probably just be a reinforcement that you've been honest and you can continue moving forward. It's a formal opportunity for your spouse to be able to ask questions with somebody in the room who can create safety and those kind of things that maybe in the past when the disclosure was being dripped and drabbled out, there wasn't the ability to ask questions and clarify because there was defensiveness and on all of that. So it's still helpful, I think, to do a full disclosure, even if they already know. If they already know, that's wonderful. That is huge because there aren't any surprises, we can move forward. If there's a couple of things that haven't, it's an opportunity to become clean with those and again, find a way, how are we going to move forward from here?
So yeah, and because it was staggered, partners are invariably left wondering, is this really it? Do I really know? So, but for those of you that haven't disclosed yet, please, please, please work with professionals. Dr. Rob does a weekly meeting with peers, so with professionals, and the number one, it comes up every single week, is disclosure. So when the professionals, need to hone in on how to handle cases and disclosures, trying to do this stuff at home is not ideal. So what I really, for this particular person, please make sure that your partner who has now been I call them vomit disclosures because this stuff happens to them and they have the stench on them and it's traumatic and it's harder for them to dig out of the hole that has been created. So I hope that your partner is working with a qualified professional to do the support and stabilization for the betrayal trauma and just the trauma. It is truly trauma. So I mean, people have physical manifestations of this, sleep issues and eating, challenges. So making sure that the partner is getting support and stabilization. But then, yeah, I wholeheartedly encourage working with professionals. There's a whole plan, and the point of a professional disclosure, a therapeutic disclosure, is that you're setting a foundation for moving forward in honesty. And I got to tell you, as an addict, I caught the I have been honest with myself and am no longer in denial. And that would be pretty amazing that after such a long period of time that, you know, there's this miraculous transformation. I hope and I hope that it's true for you, but there's usually layers. And so, you know, one of the things, you know, Troy was talking about earlier is someone was doing their fourth and fifth step. So concurrently, you know, in your healing, and I don't know what work you're doing, but hopefully you're working, you know, the first 9 steps of the 12 step, you know, are all about cleaning up the, you know, the wreckage and making a clear, you know, searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And that doesn't get shared directly with the partners. It's the synthesis of that, you know, the timelines and all of that that goes into the disclosure. So the more you do to be on a different path, the better able your partner is going to be able to believe that this time it's really true, and that there's an opportunity for moving forward in a different way. So glad you're here. Hopefully your partner, you know, is picking this up too. So next question. Spouse of a porn addict for 30 years. I know minimizing their actions is common in addicts. Yes. But after 2.5 years, he still does it, or only telling half the story. He has yet to tell the whole story to anyone. He has 2 accountability partners, but they are just coworkers, friends. He only talks to them about work for the most part. He says things like how angry I am, but he fails to mention he lied over 18 months to me and 3 counselors. How I was angry, he waited until the last minute to take off for my birthday.
And then the person continues with the next question.
Oh, you think that's the same person?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. But he doesn't say he couldn't have put in for vacation early in the year because he's the senior worker. Now we are headed for separation because I'm sick of it.
So I hear
don't
your
blame you.
yeah, I hear your pain. I'm not sure what the question is. What I'm hoping that you're able to
Oh,
do.
there's more. He says he doesn't have the shame anymore, but he says he's just a piece of shit. Oh, that sounds like shame. He says I call him a pervert, but he says that about himself. Okay.
All right. You know, I don't know this. I don't know your partner. It does sound like he's still's got a lot of shame going on. Those shadows of shame are hijacking his ability to be honest. The politician is probably very much involved in all of that. And again, we look at the politician's motive is to try and minimize pain by keeping secrets. And as we know, that doesn't really work out that well. He may or may not choose to confront the shame. He may or may not choose to confront his behavior. He may not be fully ready to step into the light. And so, what I'm hoping you're doing is doing your work, stepping into your sense of worthiness and belonging, tapping into your sense of value. Stephen Stosny is a therapist that works a lot with partners of abuse. He has a book called Moving Beyond Betrayal that I think that is one of his, I don't remember. There's a couple, but his whole point is, you know, the more that we step into our core value and recognize that we are enough, the more empowered we are to make decisions that are in our best interest and in the best interest of our loved ones. Doesn't mean that those choices are easy or are pain-free. When we look at the other person and really are hoping that they will change, and we start to see a pattern that they're not changing, it's really easy for our shadows to show up and say, well, there's something wrong with you. You're not enough. Maybe if you did this, this, and this, and then the other person would change. And those shadows of shame can hijack our own sense of worthiness and make us miserable. So I'm hoping that as you're doing this, I hear the pain and the anguish in what you typed, and I'm hoping you can find some other support. We have several drop-in groups here for betrayed partners that you might be able to find some other women. I'm assuming you're a woman because you're saying he, but that's not always a thing. But there's some betrayed partner drop-in groups where there are others who are in the same boat and can relate and help you connect with your core value and remember that you are enough. And then you will make decisions that are in your best interest and maybe in his best interest too. So I wish you well on your journey, and we're here to help as much as we can.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're taking care of yourself and you're recognizing that this is him. Yeah, minimizing is part of addiction, but it's part of active addiction and early recovery. Those, of us when we are down the path, we need to clean up quickly anything that is minimized or not quite as truthful as it should be. I can't live in that. I need to be transparent and honest. So not to the point of hurting other people, but but what I heard is he's just not willing to do. I mean, he's been lying to a therapist. That is unfortunately fairly common. It takes the right therapist to be able to ask the right questions and, the accountability. But even with that, you can have the best therapist, and if they really are committed to lying, they will. But what his accountability partners are coworkers and friends, that don't understand addiction, aren't, that haven't walked this path. The reason we do things in 12-step or drop-in groups or and peer groups, I love that Troy's got a finding peace, workshop, that's people that are looking to be on the journey together and learn from each other and support each other and take the shame away because, oh yeah, me too, well, that's normalizing, what is, otherwise crazy and shaming. So I'm sorry. I love that you're stepping into your light and going like, I've had enough of this, and and I'm going to do something different for me. In my hopes that he would, get a clue and do something different. But when he perceives himself just a piece of poop, then that's no, really. I mean, it's like if you are going to, and it's almost I think it's the chicken way out too, because I'm going to stay stuck in the muck. I'm so afraid that I'm not willing to take a brave step and go, I think it might be able to be different. What I heard when I started in my recovery journey was, that I wasn't the worst piece of poop, and other people were going, there is a way out, and I believed them enough. I listened and I was like, I'm willing to take a chance. I'm willing to believe that they might have a way out of this because I sure don't. And so just that willingness, and I don't hear that for him, but I hope he finds that. So somebody put in uh the chat, Stephen Stosny was a game changer for me, highly recommended. So it's STOSNY. And I'm sure on Amazon you'll find that along with Troy Love's Finding Peace workbook. So thanks for your book. I found your group a few weeks ago and it's a life changer. I tend to hear more from the judge, the politician, and the impotent one. The judge is strongest. I hear as a betrayed partner. What can I do to not just agree with these three tyrants?
I love that question. So you put, there's a really important part that you've been agreeing with them. So part of why they have so much power is deep inside when we've experienced the attachment wounds of loss, rejection, abandonment, neglect, betrayal, or abuse. What's happened over the years is that there have been an innate core belief that has been woven into our nervous system that is at like almost a neurological level, that when that wound gets hit, it activates some of these core beliefs that we've held a lot of times since we were kids, when we were trying to understand why these things were happening to us. And we didn't have the cognitive ability to realize, well, it's because mom and dad need some serious therapy, and they got some problems, and this isn't about me at all. We don't have the cognitive ability to do that. And so we come up with these conclusions. Well, it's because I'm not enough. I can't trust other people. There's nothing I can do. So those core beliefs are like woven inside. And so when the pain hits, that gets activated. And then what shame does, the judge, the impotent one, the politician, they amplify what is already in there. So I love that you're saying, what can I do to not just agree with them? So like we said earlier, you call them out. In Brene Brown's work, she talks about the people up in the arena who are watching you down the people up in the nosebleeding seats as watching you in the arena fighting, and you call them out. You're like, I see you, politician, I see you, judge, I see you, impotent one, I see you. Number one, I know there's a weird stuff, but they don't like it when you shine light on them. They don't like it because they like to hide in the dark. So that stops them a little bit. It's a really simple exercise that I've had people do. You just go get a journal, get a notebook from the dollar store, whatever. On the left hand side of the column, you're going to write down what the judge says, or what the impotent one says, or what the politician says, as if you were taking dictation. So it's going to be in second person. And will sound something like, you are a piece of crap. You just never measure up. You are horrible, blah, blah, blah. Or the politician, like, you can't let anybody know. If you let anybody know, they're going to hate you. So you're writing that stuff down. And then depending on if you have a higher power, if you don't, you can still do this exercise. If you have a higher power, then you would think, well, how would my higher power respond to what these shadows have said? And you write that on the right hand side in second person as well, to you. So if I were doing it, Troy, you are good enough just the way you are. You're amazing. Now, if you don't have a higher power, you think about people that love you unconditionally. How would they respond to that? It seems like a really simple exercise, but it's been one of the most powerful, life-changing exercises that I've done. And tears flowing down my face as I recognize, wow, these shadows have been lying to me for a really long time, and it isn't true. As I sit with the truth on the right-hand column and recognize what is true, and there are people that I've shared this with, and they love me, and I am not powerless. I can make choices. I've been making choices. As I do that, it starts to wear away those core beliefs on the inside, and I begin to develop new core beliefs that are like, I am enough, I matter, there are people that I can trust, there's something I can do. And that, as those core beliefs become stronger and stronger, the shadows lose their potency and they don't have as much to hook onto to hijack your life.
I love that exercise because first of all, journaling is good, but writing it down and seeing it in black and white of this is what these negative messages are, and this is the more the truth. I also use Post-it notes. I stick I am enough. I have these that are visual so that I don't buy into the negative messages. I mean, it's really easy to go there, particularly early on, or when I'm vulnerable or tired or whatever. So having Post-it notes stuck around with affirming messages to remind me, oh yeah, that's where I need to concentrate, is helpful at interrupting it too. So, okay, the next question. How long does it take an SA to fully drop all the behaviors? Is it okay to accept they are working towards recovery and begin to trust? I believe no acting out.
I don't know if there's a time frame. If you understand that the reason why they're acting out is they have been trying to manage pain in a pretty maladaptive way, but they've been trying to manage pain, and the pain is oftentimes pain that they've carried around since they were growing up. So those same attachment wounds you've been talking about, loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, abuse, betrayal. Like, it's very fascinating to me how much like porn and sex addiction counterfeits the remedy for each one of those wounds, but is never actually fulfilling. But they're doing it as in a way of managing the pain. So part of recovery is learning healthier ways to manage the pain, because the truth is we live in a world where there's still going to be rejection and neglect and abandonment and betrayal and abuse. So the thought of never experiencing any of that ever again is a dream, and it's not reality. But as we learn new ways to be able to manage that pain, we learn how to reach out, we learn how to be open, we learn how to find healthy ways to do that. The likelihood that they will go back to those other behaviors becomes smaller and smaller. What we're doing is we're building a new learning system in their brain because they have a learning system that is, this is when I'm feeling pain, this is what I do. And that learning structure, that neurological network has been there for a while. So now we're learning a new one. How long it takes, it really kind of depends on the person and their motivation and all that kind of stuff. So part of why I'm sharing that is when you understand that they are learning a new way, and sometimes they're going to fail, and the failing is part of the learning. They learn like that didn't work out that great. That was crappy. Let me figure out another way. They're learning along the way. If they're able to be open and have some discussion with you around that, and there's understanding, that helps perpetuate the learning faster. If they try to talk about it and there's a lot of shame that shows up and there's a lot of stuff, they go right back into the politician takes over and they hide and they keep secrets, and then the learning stops. So that's a challenge. So how long it takes for the rest of our lives, really? We're always learning. All of us are learning. How do we find healthier ways to manage pain? And we're not just talking about sex, food, sleep, work. Like we all numb, like thousands of ways of numbing. How long does it take? It just we keep going. Um, so part of that is I understand that as in your question, the susceptibility of I want to trust, but I'm not sure. So you be honest. I really want to be able to start trusting you again. And I'm really afraid that I'm going to open myself up for that betrayal wound to be cracked right open again. And so I'm a little hesitant and I'm guarded around that. This is what I need to be able to feel safer, and you can express your needs, and then hopefully your partner can say, yeah, I get this. Here's what I'm doing to try and create safety. Here's what I'm doing to help you understand that I'm learning. These are the tools that I'm using, and you have dialogue around that so both of you are on this journey together.
Yeah, and I think it's so hard as partners because the gaslighting, the lying, all of that. And so then all of a sudden, an addict goes, and now you should trust me. And so it really is like Troy was talking about, what am I doing? What are the actions? Are you seeing consistent work towards recovery? Dr. Rob's book, Out of the Doghouse, gives kind of step-by-step some practical guidelines of how to do things differently and better if you're working on rebuilding a relationship. But I was also thinking, like Troy mentioned, if now they're eating a chocolate cake every night, if they're gaming for 3 hours every night, if they're smoking and vaping and all of that, it's the same pathways, it's the same dopamine. So it really is, recovery is doing things differently. So and I'm using I don't know, but how much time is he spending in his outer circle behavior? What are the healthy things that he can do, and that you're seeing the actions, not the words. So but this sounds really hopeful to me, because like I hear that you want to begin to trust, and so you're not going to do it perfectly. I mean, you're going to over trust, and the addict's going to muff up on some level, but as long as you're able to have a dialogue, talk about that hurt. I have shared many times, Kristen Snowden talks about the story I'm telling myself, the story I tell myself when this happens, or when you do that, is that you don't care about a relationship or whatever, and that I'm not safe, whatever it is. But it's not you're doing this, pointing fingers. It's like I'm talking to you because I want to be safe and I want to be able to engage with you, but we need to create that safe space. Okay, the next question is, how do we develop a kind, rational, and calm dialogue in even difficult situations like stress at work, relationship problems, etc.?
So there's a beautiful book called Crucial Conversations that was written for the business world, but a lot of the tools that they use, you can use in any setting. One of the things that they emphasize right off the bat is what is your intent when you're starting to have a conversation. And they point out that our intent can quickly change in moments from I really want to be able to collaborate and I really want to be able to brainstorm to I want to be right and I want to prove that you're wrong and you don't know nothing. And it can happen like that. What they don't explain is why it happens like that is because one of your wounds got hit and now all of a sudden you are reacting to the pain and you're trying to find a way of pulling out of the pain, whether you are going to blame or ooh, the power just
That was wild. Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Blame, and then the lights
Right.
flash.
Blaming, protesting. I call them the burpees. So blaming, rescuing, going in and swooping in and trying to save everybody and tell them what they should do. Protesting, kind of playing the victim, or escaping, checking out. If we're doing any of those 4 burpees, what that does is it invites the other person to do those burpees right back. So part of it is starting out before you even walk into that. What do I want? What is the outcome that I'm really wanting? And it would be something like, I want to be able to talk about this difficult conversation in a way that they feel respected and I feel respected, and we're able to come up with some solutions. That's really what I want. So that when you notice that maybe it starts to veer off a little bit, you ask yourself, okay, what do I want? What can I do to keep us back here? It's a cognitive, a prefrontal cortex exercise, because usually what happens is when the wound gets hit, we immediately go into fight or flight response. Our body has a physical reaction where all the blood that usually goes up here is now moving to our heart, our lungs, our quads, our biceps, so we can get out of there or fight, and we're not thinking straight anymore. That's called flooding. John Gottman's work talks about that's flooding when that happens and we get overwhelmed. And he identifies that if that begins, it takes at least 20 minutes before our brain comes back online before we can have a rational conversation. What tends to happen though is we keep pushing through thinking it's going to get better and better, and it doesn't. There's more and more flooding, more and more defensiveness, and then it crashes and burns. So if it starts to get kind of out of hand, say, hey, this isn't working. This isn't what I wanted. I really wanted us to be able to figure out how to do that. Can we come back in, let's say, 20, 30 minutes and try this again? And breathe, like go take a time out, something, so that your brain can calm down. So first is, what's your intent? Try to stay with intent. One of the ways to do that is to see the person as a human and not an object. What I mean by that is, as you're walking into this, what are the things that this person worries about? What's the sense of how much worry they have? What are the things that this person is amazing at? What are their talents and abilities? What are some of their dreams? What are some of their hopes? What are some of their fears? What's going on at home? What's going on in other parts of their life that are their struggles for them? So I'm able to see this whole human being and have compassion for them as I'm going into this conversation. It makes it a lot easier than if I go in and I'm like, well, you're the barrier to my problems. You are the reason why I can't get what I need done. It's your fault that and all of a sudden I don't see him as human, and my intent just got derailed and it's not going to go well.
And I agree with all that. Two things I was thinking in addition to that is, like in relationships, practice when you're not in conflict. So if you guys, like if 2 people see themselves doing the same dance of conflict over and over again, you don't want to do it next time. Say, we seem to keep repeating this pattern. I'm wondering if we if we stop and take a 20-minute break, come back, but pause rather than getting into the whole escalated, whatever it is. The other thing, and you were basically talking about it too, is being curious. It's like, okay, this person has all these talents and whatever. What is, like, I want to hear from you, Troy. What are what I want to know more about what you're thinking. And if I'm listening and hearing more, then I'm going to also be able to probably see why we're in a little conflict about this. And is there common ground? Is like, well, we both want this goal. We're just approaching it from a different way. And, some combination might be good. But if I'm curious, I find if I'm curious, I'm not escalated and demanding my way. I want to know more about, I want to know more because I'm clearly missing something with my lens. Okay, next question. I need some help determining how and what frequency my porn addicted husband should disclose when he has a relapse. He claims this info is in his 12-step program sponsor, but that is not my understanding. I thought the sponsor was to help prevent relapse and talk about it, fears, anxieties, etc., but that the partner is supposed to maintain honesty, transparency with the betrayed partner. If so, what are some guidelines for that? I really need help with this. Thank you.
So one of the things that I would be wondering about in this situation is whether or not the full disclosure has happened already or not, because usually at the end of the full disclosure, there is also a statement that the addict is making about what the partner can expect from them in the future. And there's usually something in there that says something like there's a 24-hour rule, that if they slip below what we call the bottom lines or inner circle behaviors, if they do one of those, they have 24 hours to share that with the partner, and have a discussion about that. The sponsor's job isn't to prevent relapse. The sponsor's job is to help kind of cut through the denial and confront some of the behaviors and be a guide along the 12-step path to help the addict be able to find more tools and stuff in their recovery. And oftentimes that accountability, the sponsor is also an accountability partner. Sometimes what I found is helpful is when the person slips, they're able to go to their sponsor and talk about it and kind of let the shame off a little bit, and then they go back and they talk to their spouse. So to try and answer your question, it really is, that is a discussion that you and your partner need to have about what are the bottom line behaviors that he or she would disclose to you, and what's the time frame in which, and you come to some agreement about that. Generally speaking, the rule has been 24 hours. That's what I've most commonly seen has happened. And then also, one of the things that I caution about is not having the spouse become the accountability partner, because that can be really, really triggering for the partner and is not particularly healthy. But that doesn't mean that the partner, the addict, needs to not, like, they shouldn't be keeping secrets. Secrets aren't that great. But having some explanation of, like, if these are the things that I'm going to come and tell you within 24 hours, these are also the things that you can expect from me. I'm going to be going to meetings. I'm going to be checking in with my accountability partners. I'm going to be talking to my sponsor. I'm going to be going to group, and they're also checking those things in with you as well to create some guidelines of what you can expect. And that's how they begin to build trust, is they are following through on what they said they were going to do, and you're able to see that that's happening. So hopefully that's helpful. That is, if you have a therapist that both of you, either you or your partner is working with, the therapist can help guide that discussion about, okay, what are the things that are going to be disclosed to you, are not going to be disclosed to you, what is the time frame that will happen.
So the next question is, oops, I hit the wrong button. After 43 years, knowing my husband since age 16, discovery was 5 years ago. Formal disclosure 3 years ago. It was horrific. Never thought my husband could do such things. We've been separated for 3.5 years. I was going to ask my husband to move back in as I was feeling finally recovery behavior, then a discovery. My husband says we need to divorce to get healing. He made promises we'll get through this together. We love each other. Then, when the divorce attorneys get involved, he just disappeared, refuses contact, and I feel betrayed.
I think the next one is part of that too.
Oh, I'm struggling and not doing good with this, and our attorneys are encouraging no talking. I've had health issues, a car accident. We both agreed to keep communication open. He even says couples can get back together later. He asks our sons how I'm doing. I'm struggling with this. It hits my abandonment and sad.
I'm sure it's hitting your abandonment wound. I'm sure it's hitting your betrayal wound. I'm sure it's creating all kinds of confusion and you're getting mixed messages. And my heart hurts with you. Sounds like you've been um, with him for a long time. So this is not only is the betrayal surprising because it's new, and now you're getting mixed messages as well. I'm not sure what the question is there. I'm hearing the hurt. I'm hearing the pain. I'm hoping that you're able to wrap yourself around some people who are loving on you and walking through some of this with you. Part of it is now that you have attorneys involved. Oh, questions in the third part.
I don't know which is the third part. Is it the last one? It was an abusive relationship. He relapsed and lied. I don't, maybe, and lied to his therapist and myself and sons. Yes, I think so. I've had fear in his lack of recovery, but I still have hope. That's ambivalent love. Dr. Rob talks about that a lot. I feel we lived apart too long. How can I work through this deep pain? I'm losing my husband and feeling our attorneys are controlling this divorce. I do not want to go through. I was told if my husband wanted to reach out, he would. My attorney put fear in me. I feel flooded and have hit my PTSD. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of trauma, and it seems like there's a lot of people now involved with the attorneys and all of that. This is a complex situation. I'm hoping that you have a therapist that you can reach out to who can provide some guidance around the situation to help you have some support and wrap yourself around it. The lawyers are doing what their lawyer's job is, which is trying to protect their clients. You're having hope, ambivalent hope that maybe we can work out this marriage. He's giving you double answers. So that causes a great deal of confusion through all of it. It goes back to what I said earlier about really connecting with your core value and your enoughness and trusting yourself that you are going to find the right attorneys that make the right that will support the decisions that you are looking to, you looking into what is going to be the right decision for you and your children and your loved ones, and it comes from a place of knowing that you're enough, which when we're dealing with PTSD and betrayal and abandonment, that all kind of like amplifies those core beliefs that say I'm not enough, there's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with him, all of that. And so really doing some self-compassion work during this painful time so that that light inside of you can shine brighter and help guide you into making the decisions that are going to be for you, best interest of you and your loved ones.
So yeah, and I have my heart hurts. I'm so sad for you. I mean, it's long term, basically your entire adult life. But the abusive relationship pains me, and I hear you wanting to believe and hope that he's on a different path, and then I hear him doing the same kind of lying and manipulation that he's been doing, so I would invite you to lean into your qualified therapist and support network. I was really thinking there's a lot of grief. So doing the grief work to grieve the loss of what you hope for, grieve the loss of a relationship, grieve the loss of, that he's going to get better and different. I also would encourage you to write down what you really had, because it's easy to, I think, to look at it with the glow of, oh, we've been together all our lives, we've got these amazing sons, and all of this type of thing, and forget about the lies, the manipulation, the abuse. And so be really clear that, yes, there's grief of losing what you had hoped for when you got together at 16. When you said I do, you had expectations and believed that you were moving forward and did your part to move forward in that way. So but I think having clear recognition of what it is, and then doing the grief work. Sophia Cottle has some grief work workshops. I value her work. She did a webinar on In the Rooms. You can email me, Tammy at Seeking Integrity, TAMI, and I'll send you links to all of that. She does some free grief groups on intherooms.com. So there's some support and help, for all of that. But surround yourself with, with the good voices, the good support, so that you are not, I think Troy's right. The attorneys are doing what attorneys do. So, but the 43 years wasn't all lies and misinformation. There were real things in there too. So it's really challenging to discern, to pick through all of that. So, did you want to answer the, well,
I can do it. It's easier to type. I can
yeah.
do it really quickly. The person said, why would my partner do this to me, but not his first wife? He doesn't feel like his childhood sexual trauma doesn't have anything to do with addiction. I honestly don't know why, and I honestly don't know if he's being honest about that either. So, but regardless, the really big question is, regardless of why, the big thing for you is, what do you want to do for you? Doesn't sound like he's owning a whole lot, not taking accountability for a lot. So regardless of the reason why, which is what we want when trauma happens, we try to figure it out. The more important question is, what do you want to do? That's a much more healing question, because the why will take you in a tailspin that you'll sit there for years trying to figure out. And the answer is, it actually has nothing to do with you, and you're enough. And so hopefully you can do what you need to do to take care of you and your loved ones in the best way possible.
So the next question is, if SA is a disease of secrecy, what are your thoughts about focusing on my own recovery? Sorry. And not having transparent, truthful conversations about the demise of the relationship with our closest to us, adult children, family, friends. We are a cross-border ex-couple, and the relationship ended 7 months ago on the phone. I'm having trouble getting full closure. It feels like I'm contributing to the secrecy and enabling his disease.
So the politician can very much hijack our healing by saying, like, don't tell anybody. People are going to think you're crazy. People are not going to understand. People are going to take sides. All of those kind of things that the politician might say. In a healthy relationship, secrets are not part of a healthy relationship. I'm hearing that the relationship ended. There are people that were involved that may not know the whole story. So part of it is figuring out, how can I honor the truth and how can I honor myself, while also not throwing everybody under the bus, even though you might want to throw them under the bus sometimes. But how can you do that in a way that does that? And part of that is to tell your story, not focusing so much on their behavior, although that's going to be part of this experience of, like, when this happened, this is how it affected me. But you're sharing your story and how it affected you and what were coming up for you. And there's a couple of principles around that. When I tell people there's two rules about telling my story. One is I'm going to tell my story because I need your help. I need support from you. So I'm going to share my story with you because I really need your love and support. Second is I'm going to share my story with you because I can see that you're struggling and hearing my story might help you. If it doesn't apply to either of those situations, then I usually don't share my story. And Brene Brown follows up and says, who's earned the right to hear your story? Because not everybody in the world has earned the right to hear your story. But you're talking about adult children, family, and friends. They're probably confused. They're probably trying to understand, what do you need from them? What kind of support do you need from them? How can you share with them what's going on? Doesn't mean you need to do like the dumpster, like just dump everything on them, but you can share with them what you need. And some people, you may tell them everything. So what do you need from them that will help you and move on? And how can you collaborate with them? So that's part of the question. So yeah, keeping secrets not particularly helpful. Do it with wisdom. Do it in a way that comes from a place of loving yourself.
And also comes from a place like, check your motives. Like, I really encourage you to do that, because if you're looking to be, oh, look what he did to me, and you should, and I'm just he and she, but if it's more about, you should know how bad he is and what he did to this relationship, that isn't fair to anybody. Because we talk all the time about, that I just talked about it a little while ago, the vomit disclosure. Do adult children need to hear gory details about their parents sex lives or whatever? No. Is it okay to say there was brokenness, and it was painful for me to see, I couldn't continue to do that, he wasn't able to meet me where I needed him to, and that's, if you're in relationship with these people, if they are now part of the exes, like it's okay for them to wonder. If they want to reach out to you, they can. So like, it's often I want the vindication. You should know that it wasn't my fault, it is his fault. And and to what purpose does that serve? So be really clear on what your motivation and goals are, and are you doing something that will be loving for that other person? They need to know, they just need to know, do they really, and if so be careful. Be careful, take care of you, but also be loving to people that would be the next victims otherwise. So we have completed another month. Here we go. So I will see you in September, and we're grateful for all of you. Keep coming back, keep asking your questions. Dr. David is on tonight at 5 p.m. for Betrayed Partners, the 12:30, and these are all Pacific time, the 12:30 Pacific time Betrayed Partner group is today, and then there's another one tomorrow morning, so join those. Troy has the Friday morning group for guys, join that, and alternating Thursdays, he's on for Betrayed Partners, Thursdays at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So lots of resources on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Keep coming back. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Troy.
Thank you, Tammy. Take care.
Bye.